I was thinking about how lots of people are wondering how to witness for others, and I was also thinking about one of the channels I like to watch called Uncle Dan, and he has this series called Engineering 101. So I thought, well, maybe I could do something similar, but better and for Christians, and tell people how they could witness, just the basic idea of how to get started witnessing if you need help. So here I present not engineering, but witnessing 101. Now your best resource, surprisingly, is probably not even going to be this, but it's going to be YouTube and the Bible. So let me explain. YouTube is where I learn lots of things that I can use to witness to other people. Like, lots of people today are believing in evolution, but the Bible says that evolution is not real, but that God created everything in a real 6 days, just like we have 24-hour days. In 6 days he created everything. Then on the 7th day he rested. And so using YouTube, we can find that there's actually scientific evidence for creation. It's very helpful when you're trying to talk to your friends, and more about my friends in a minute, but it's very useful when you need some evidence to tell people about Jesus and why he made everything and not evolution. Also, the Bible. You need to at least have a basic idea of the Bible, and don't freak out thinking I'm asking you to memorize the entire Bible. Not even pastors do that, but just having a basic idea of some of the stories and the ideas behind those stories that happened a long time ago. They're still relevant today, so having an idea of what's behind the story and the story itself can really help. And if you want to read the Bible, I suggest reading 1 to 3 chapters a day. If you read 3 chapters a day, you'll finish in 1 year. And if you read 1 chapter a day, you'll finish in 3 years. And I suppose if you read 2 a day, you'll finish in 2 years. Something close to that. So, okay, so let's get started with this first video. And so instead of Uncle Dane had a century placement, I'm going to start off at the basics, how to start witnessing. So lots of kids these days, they're not really sure how to start witnessing, and you can just be wondering where to start your career. It can kind of be like that sometimes, because I haven't chosen a career, but it's hard to decide some things. It's not necessarily a career. Sometimes it's hard to decide what ice cream you want. But this is about trying to save other people, so this is much more serious than ice cream. And I'm gonna give you some ideas on what I did with my friend Nathan and how I started to witness to him. And I'm still working on trying to witness to him, but this is how I started. And so I'll be giving you a few tips along the way. So with Nathan, I just wanted to witness him for a while because he's my best friend. So I told him, hey Nathan, like schools, how they all teach atheism and the Big Bang, right? Like there's no God and that the universe came by the Big Bang and stuff evolved, right? And he agreed, because if you know about these things, then you'll agree, because most kids realize that, especially kids who aren't Christians, but even Christian kids realize that Christianity isn't being taught in schools today. Evolution is. So, especially if your friend is not a Christian, then they'll be sure to agree. And then I'll ask, well, think about this. Well, religion says that God made things, right? And he said, right. But science said that nothing made everything. And he said, right, because that's what he believes. And so, well, if they teach that in schools, science, then why would they not teach why would they not teach Christianity? Have you ever heard of Christianity being taught in schools? And he said no, because maybe when our founding fathers are here, they did, but today they don't. And even back then, they weren't enforced in it. But now, today, if you don't believe in evolution, you're the dunce. And so today, it's like required that you believe it, otherwise you're not smart. And the majority of people believed in Christianity back then, but it never was taught as a fact. And so he thought about that, and he actually considered that, and I could tell that he was kind of absorbing it, and he agreed that that wasn't really fair to the people. And then I explained, well, now that's really unfair, because now if you teach people and try to tell them something, they are not open to what you want to talk about. And him being my best friend, and me not pushing any religion on him, he thought about it and he agreed. Yeah, that is kind of not being fair to people. Because I said, if you want to believe whatever you believe, I don't think you're a bad person for believing evolution, and you don't think I'm a bad person for being a Christian. So why can't we just believe whatever we want to believe? You see, science is, lots of people are going to take this to heart, but science is, in a sense, a religion, because evolution, and you have to believe in evolution, and you have to believe in the Big Bang. So science is really a religion, because people are holding to that as their God, in a sense, because science is how everything came to be, and so they're holding to it. So science is, in fact, a type of religion, and it's subtle, but it's really being a religion being taught in school, because kids aren't open to believing what they want, and that's forcing religion on someone, which, as we said, isn't fair. And then I explained, well, this is even more unfair, as I said earlier, because kids can't think for themselves. And by now the bell had rung. We were talking before school, and our class was nearby, so we were talking outside the classroom, well, before the teacher let us in. So I said, here, I'll prove it to you. How schools are making kids unopen to new ideas that aren't open to what they think. Alright, so this is my cool tip experiment thing that I thought it was really cool. And so I made sure to explain this tip properly to him first, but then I enacted it in a different way. So I know that sounds confusing, but I'll explain it. So I told Nathan, well, you know how addition works, right? You take a number and you put some other numbers in. Say I have 2 apples, and you bring over 2 apples, and you put them in a circle on a piece of paper. There's 4 apples in the circle. That's how addition works, and everyone knows how addition works, so he said, yeah. But subtraction is really negative addition, because if I have 2 apples and you bring over negative 2 apples, well then there's negative apples and then there's positive apples. So they cancel each other out and you're left with 0 apples. But really, you just added 2 negative numbers, and that's what subtracting is. You add 2 negative numbers, and so subtraction is really negative addition. And so he agreed, because if you understand algebra to a very basic percentage, really, if you basically understand 6th grade or 5th grade math, you'll agree that yes, this is true. That is just how it works. If you add 2 and negative 2, you get 0. But if you subtract 2 from 2, you get 0. So some fancy math guys decided a long time ago, hey, let's not add negative numbers. Let's just make a new sign, and that's easier. And basically the same thing happened with multiplication, and that's why we have division and subtraction, not just negative addition and negative multiplication. So Nathan agreed, because that is how he's a smart boy. And I'm sure all of you are smart too, so if you listened again, you can listen to it again, but you'll see that subtraction really is negative addition. And I told him to watch this. You see, I was about to tell people that, did you know that subtraction is negative addition? Now you see, no, not to blame these kids, but math is not really the favorite subject of people. Kind of like how religion is not the favorite subject of people. If you try and discuss it, even with a Christian friend, they're like, hey, let's change the subject. And most times, I kind of oblige, so I'm working on trying not to do that. Or at least continuing in a friendly way, not forcing it on anyone, but anyway, that's a story for another time. But people, hate to say it, aren't really that interested in math these days, even though that kind of is the future, but anyway. So, people have got this in their head that there's 4 operators, because everyone's learned about the order of operations. Multiplication and division, then adding or subtracting. And as you get older, you learn about parentheses and exponents. But anyway, so that's the order of operations, and that's got everyone drilled into their head that there are 4 operations, and these operations are separate. And no matter how much you try and teach them about inverse operations, they still think that they're completely separate. Not consciously, it's just a thing. So I just walked up and I didn't explain myself, but I said, hey, did you know that subtraction is negative addition? And everything in their head went, no, red light. Because that's how our brains work. They're designed so that if any false information comes along, we know that it's not true. But you see, Nathan was listening, and he was kind of surprised because I'd explained it to him. But the thing is, I hadn't explained it to them. All I had is just stated a fact, just thrown it out there. And lots of times, if you don't explain the fact beforehand, even if the fact is true, the people aren't open. And then I tried to explain, well, you see, if I have 2 apples and my friend brings over -2 apples, then we put them in a group, blah, blah, blah. But they wouldn't listen to it because their brain had been cemented. No, this kid is trying to explain something that's not true. But see, had I explained it beforehand, before I said the fact, like I had with Nathan, they would have most likely been open to it. And then I'm like, see? And then I said, well, that's math. And that's a cool experiment you can try at home. But so that's math. But this other kid who I had done it, I did it on a few people. Like 2 people, 3 people. And the first kid I did it on came and I guess he heard that we were talking about how this proves that people aren't really open to new facts. And evolution is kind of taking over. And schools are basically indoctrinating kids that there's no new ideas and that everything is as it seems, which is, if you know anything about reality, to some degree, you'll admit that things are not always as they seem. And so we were talking about evolution. I could tell he was kind of surprised, but he agreed that was what schools are doing, and he said, I still believe in evolution, but I don't think schools should be doing that. So, yay, a point for me. That's what I was thinking. But then, this kid made a perfect opportunity for me to prove it even more to Nathan. And I'll tell you that in a sec. So this guy's name was Lincoln. It's just their first name. They're getting free publicity here, so I don't think they'd mind. But anyway, Lincoln, yeah, pretty sure that's his name. He was like, well, he heard us. We were talking about evolution and stuff, and I was trying to get to the point that you can't really prove evolution or stuff because of historical evidence. So I asked him, hey, can you prove, I said to Nathan, that Abraham Lincoln died. You don't have a time machine. I mean, can you prove that he died? And he said, yeah, you can prove, because you can look at his bones and see his DNA and say, yeah, he died. Okay, I said, yeah. Now I said, can you prove that he was the, 16th or whatever? Can you prove that he was a president of the United States? He wondered a minute and he said, yes, actually, no. I said, no, you don't have a time machine. Sorry, buddy. You just have his bones. You used DNA analysis and whatever, and you figured out, hey, this is Abraham Lincoln's bones. But without knowing anything else about him other than these are the bones of a man named Abraham Lincoln, can you prove that he was the president of the United States? You know that he is, but the world doesn't, and you have to prove it to the world. Can you? And he said, well, no. But this kid, Lincoln, as I mentioned earlier, he was like, whoa. You see, we have DNA evidence. We could figure out how, when he was born and stuff. I was like, yeah, can you figure out he was the president? It was like, well, yeah, we can figure out he was born this time. He was born this time and died this time. I was like, oh, well, great. Can you prove he was the president? He was like, yes, because you can. And then he just dropped off because when someone is right and you're wrong and you argue your case, and the person realizes that you're right and they're wrong, people don't really like it. So they just be quiet. So I said to Nathan, see, that's proof. People are just sometimes not open to things, and that's just not fair to Christianity. And then the bell rang and we went inside, and as we were settling in, I asked a few more kids, but that kind of turned into like a yelling match. So talk to this about your friend and to like 2 other people, not to the whole classroom. But anyway, that was how to start witnessing to a friend that is an atheist, and then I'm going to talk about how to witness to someone who is a Christian who believes in evolution. So, first of all, the Bible is not supportive of evolution. It's not biblical. Sorry to say I don't have any fun tips that from real world experience. Do have lots of evidence that you can use though, so hopefully they'll be just as useful. And so, first of all, as I said, the Bible and evolution is not biblical. There is no evidence for that. Read Genesis 1-2. Read it. There is no evidence that evolution is in there. But there's lots of different theories about how evolution could be snuck into Genesis 1 and 2 without interfering with the actual biblical story that happened. And so we're going to be looking at one of those. And again, look at Genesis 1-2. You could even turn there if you'd like, because even though I won't be saying it, that is where your evidence needs to come from. As well as some places in the New Testament where Paul is talking. He talks about creation sometimes. So the first theory is the gap theory, where between Genesis 1 and 1 and Genesis 1 and 2, there was a long time in which there was a big gap. Because in Genesis 2 it says the world was void and without waters. But in verse 1 it says in the beginning was God, and that was it. And so their theory is that that the Big Bang took place between verse 1 and 2, or at least something monumental took place, and so there's a very long gap between verse 1 and 2, which would support something like the Big Bang happening. But there's no evidence there, and it's nothing like that is mentioned in the Bible. If you think such a long time, such a monumental thing took place, you think God would have mentioned it to Moses or someone else, but no. And then the next one is that God used evolution to create the world, and this ties in with the theory of that they're not literal days, the 6 days, that each day was like 1,000,000 years or so, and that in the first day, God, on day 0, like verse 2, like verse 1, there was like the Big Bang type thing, or God made everything. So one of those. And then every day, day 1, day 2, there was like a million years where all this, dust coalesced into the sun, and the next day, the other stars coalesced, and the moon and earth came together. And then that would explain why they're not literal. That would have to use that there's not literal days. And then God used evolution to evolve things. But you see that is clearly not the case. In Genesis, it clearly says God spoke the word, and instantly these things happened. There's no evidence for evolution in any of these. And so, as I come to, and we can see that just basically the whole argument against evolution is that it's not biblical. There's no evidence for any type of evolution, but there's some of you who still believe. So, and there are also those who you need to try and convince to not to believe. So for any who have doubts, or if any of your people who you're trying to witness to have doubts, stay tuned for next episode of Book of Witnessing 101, and we will be discussing more on this next week. And I hope you all enjoy this, and I'll see you all next video. So guys, this is my new installment I'm making. I hope you all will like it, and going to be titling this channel Witnessing 101 with my page that's got this all started on as the channel thing. So I'll have a link of it in my normal channel, guys, and I'll put this in my normal channel just to get you guys started. And so hope you all will be ready to come back and learn more on how to witness. But until then, see you guys.